Now I'd like to invite Brad Whitworth back to the stage to introduce our closing keynote, who is all about making the world a better place. Brad?
We are reaching the end of our time together at the communication crossroads, but we have voyages to go beyond this. We're going to be wrapping up with a truly inspiring speaker in Ryan McCarty. As the former director of customer and employee relations at TCC, which is the largest Verizon authorized retailer in the United States, Ryan McCarty is no stranger to empowering employees through a powerful cultural movement. From an idea hatched over chips and salsa in a Mexican restaurant in Marion, Indiana, Ryan's culture of good has linked employees, customers, and community causes. Ryan believes in order for a company's culture of good to be successful and meaningful, giving back has to be ingrained in the very foundation of its core values. That's why Ryan has taken on a new role as a co-founder of Culture of Good LLC. In his work, Ryan helps organizations engage the hearts of their employees and empowers them to make the changes that they wish to see in their communities. With no further ado, here's Ryan McCarty. Have a great show.
Thank you. What's up, all you communicators out there? You guys ready to have some fun? All right, cool. Now, one thing that I do, by the way, bonjour, mes amis. Okay. Hey, that took 2 weeks, okay? That's all I've got. One thing that I always do when I get on stage is I want to prove how great the attendees are so that next year people are going to want to come. So we use social media in a big way, right? So how many are on social media quite a bit? Raise your hand. All right, so you understand I'm always on there. So I want the house lights to come up a little bit, and in just a moment, on the count of 3, I'm going to record us cheering and screaming, all right? So everybody knows this is the most wild group of communicators in the world, okay? So I know it's been several days, and you're like, can we just get out of here? Well, you've packed your bags. They're up against the back wall. Some of you haven't even got a seat. You're just standing in the back like, Ryan, I'm leaving in 10 minutes, all right? So the reason I do this before I speak is if my presentation sucks, then no one knows, okay? Everybody on social media is going to be like, wow, it's amazing. We want him to come speak at our place. All right. So in just some, I don't care what you do. Stand on chairs, stand on your neighbor's head, whatever you've got to do to let the world know that IABC is a crazy amount of good communicators in the world. So don't just sit there. Look at the person next to you. Tell them you got to get crazy. All right, here we go. All right, everybody, we're at IABC 2018, and we're rocking it. We're a group of communicators wanting to make the world a better place. Here we are. We're doing it. Make sure you become a part of IABC. Great people. Great cause. Let's rock this day. All right, thank you. It's kind of like Instagram when you go out, you're like, everybody's smiling on the picture, and then afterwards you're like, okay, now we sit down and we're really quiet. The food wasn't that great, but I took a picture of it, so I have to put it on Instagram. So what do? I spent the last 20 years, really 25 years, inspiring people to live meaningful lives. So much of our life is spent at work. It would be nice if we had the same experience I had when I came to work today. When I came to work today, I walked on the stage and everybody clapped and cheered. Could you imagine if you walked into work and everybody just clapped and cheered for you? This is like the only space that really happens. Many times our work ends up becoming very nonchalant every day. Sometimes our work just isn't connected with the idea of being meaningful and fulfilling. We know that nearly 70% of employees feel disengaged in their work. That's about 2/3 of people. So if you feel engaged with your work today, that means that potentially the person on your right and the person on your left really doesn't like what they do. So just look at them. It's a fascinating idea that we spend most of our time at work. Most of us want to live meaningful lives, but we don't connect that what with our why. So for 20 years, I've spent in nonprofit work. I started off in nonprofit work because of my own personal experience of a tragedy when I was 6 years old. When I was 6 years old, after a year of my mom being diagnosed a paranoid schizophrenic, my dad, a heroin addict, in Marion, Indiana, in a small town in the States. I was in school one day when my mom's paranoid schizophrenia and depression took over. Her sickness took over. And when I was in class that day as a 6-year-old little kid, my mom took a shotgun and went into my backyard where I played as a little kid. And she took her life. You can imagine with me for a moment looking at a small child at 6 years old whose mom had just committed suicide and whose dad was a heroin addict. And you would look at a kid like that and you would say, there's really not a whole lot of hope for that child. There's not a lot of potential there to do anything meaningful and significant. But isn't it interesting sometimes how we find our purpose right in the middle of our pain? And growing up, I always had this understanding that in spite of what I had been through as a child, that there was something about being able to walk through that type of tragedy, to face that type of adversity, and yet on the other side do something significant with the life that I had been given, that really became a major motivator in my life. My dad had a wake-up call throughout that process, and walking through that together, he had a life change where he found himself in a spiritual awakening, and that's where I found myself in church, and I grew up in church, and my dad's life was completely turned around, and I'm happy to say today that today he's a parent to special needs kids, and he's adopted many of them out of foster care, and he's an awesome, awesome man. And sometimes, out of great tragedy becomes great triumph. But it's amazing to be able to watch the process of my own personal journey and recognize that my story, and I know you've heard a lot about storytelling over the last few days, that my story brings me to a place where I wanted to lean my life into the world and answer the question, what could I do meaningful, and how could I reach that next little Ryan, that next family that's torn apart through tragedy, whatever that tragedy might look like. And so I dove headfirst into ministry. I became a pastor. Now, I've got tattoos, I smoke cigars, and I drink beer, so I never really fit in. That's my confession for the day. And I became a pastor, and I leaned into doing that type of work. And one Sunday, I got up on a stage just like this, and my whole message was around your why equaling your what. You know, in the process of doing nonprofit work for so many years and reaching out, I've been able to do that type of work with 3 wonderful, beautiful women in my life. This is my family. Now, my wife's in the middle. Brenna, our youngest, is on your left, and Bria is on your right. Bria lives in L.A. and Hollywood and makes a living on YouTube, which is pretty awesome, isn't it? Brenna, my youngest, is an illustrator, photographer, and designer, and she does videography and all of that. And I know you're looking at my wife in the middle, and you're looking at me, and you're looking back at my wife, and you're wondering how in the world could she get someone as good looking as Ryan? And I totally get it. No, I'm obviously joking. My wife is the strongest woman that I know. She runs a whole movement called Fierce, where she goes into organizations and systems coach, as a systems coach, creates pathways for women to fiercely thrive in business. Not just so they know that they're accepted in business, but they're celebrated and championed in business. So every day I wake up and I know why I do, and I'm inspired knowing that I have 3 women in my life that count on me and teach me how to be the best man that I can be in life. And so I wanted to share that with you because I think it's important for us to know our why. You know, our why is really significant. When I got up that Sunday and I told this whole message around your why equaling your what, that we should wake up every day not just knowing what we have to do. Our what is a list of tasks that we must get done. But our why is something more significant. It's a higher purpose. It's what I like to call our calling. You know, I talk to people all the time and I meet them all over the world and I go up and my first question is, obviously, what's your name? My second question is, what do you do? And most people can quickly tell me what they do. But then when I say, why do you do it? Usually the answer's not as quick. Because many times we don't know why we do what we do. Or we just do it for a paycheck. Or we do it because we thought it was the right thing to do. Or we do it because our life just kind of led in this direction. Imagine in a room full of communicators not being able to answer together collectively why we do what we do on a daily basis. How significant of a change we could make in the world if every single one of us walked out that door today and all the information and ideas and creative stuff we're taking back to our work. If we could walk out that door today and have that knowing inside of us of why we do what we do every single day, could you imagine how we could make the world a better place? It's significant. When I got up and I talked about your why equaling your what I didn't know is the CEO of the largest Verizon wireless retailer in the country was sitting out in the audience. And after I got off the stage, he came up to me afterwards and he said, we need to grab lunch. And I didn't know where the conversation was going. I really didn't know who he was, and he introduced himself as Scott, and I said, sure, let's grab lunch this week. And we got lunch, and he started telling me over chips and salsa, as Brad was saying, how he had a growing company with thousands of employees across 40 states, and he was successful in growing this business, but he said he didn't know if his employees knew why they did what they did every single day. And so he thought in his head, I'll get with this pastor because pastors give free advice. And when he said, how can I bring this message into my business on your why equaling your what? I didn't give him free advice. I actually said, you should hire me. And he said, hire a pastor? And this is what he said. He said, what would your boss think about that? It's exactly what he said. And Scott wasn't a church guy, but he heard about this dude with tattoos, and we just hit it off. And he didn't hire me right away. It took 3 months. It actually took a traumatic brain injury. He was outside with his son on a skateboard, and he slipped on his skateboard and hit the back of his head and had to be lifelined to a hospital. He had 3 skull fractures, internal bleeding, and a traumatic brain injury. It was on the brink of death. And as part of his recovery, he lived through. He remembered the conversation that we had over chips and salsa. When I said, Scott, you're successful. You're making lots of money. You have a growing company. But why are you doing it? What's your legacy? This is Scott. I know this looks like a before and after picture for Hair Club for Men, but it's not. Please don't tweet that. But Scott and I embarked on building this movement within his company of over thousands of employees in over 42 states, looking for ways to engage them in meaningful ways. Not just a CSR program, not just a one day of service every year, but really building culture, the DNA of the business. That his company wouldn't just be about profit, but it would be about purpose. in engaging and inspiring employees in significant, meaningful work. Nobody wakes up one day and says, I want to sell phones for Verizon. I can't wait to sell a phone today. But how do you connect your everyday what to a significant why? Today's term is called job crafting. It's where you take what you do currently and you do it with care or with love. You connect what you're passionate about into your everyday job. Some people would say, well, I need to stop working where I'm at if I'm going to do significant good in the world. And I would say, stay where you're at. You don't have to go work for a charity to be charitable. You can do good right where you are. It's not only doing what you love, but it's doing what you do already with love. It's connecting your why into your what. And we embarked on building this culture of good. And what we did initially was a day where we sent out over 60,000 backpacks with school supplies across all of those states to all the employees. And we did start with a day of service. We scaled up what I had done in my local community with 1,000 backpacks to over 60,000 in just a few months. And that day became a significant moment for the company and a significant moment for each employee, because each employee was given permission to care, permission to do something meaningful in their day with their work that was aligned with the business. His stores were in local communities. We found it's really crucial to align the good you do in your life with the work that you're doing. And so we embarked on this backpack giveaway, and we started getting emails from employees that said this was the most significant day in their life. This was the most significant day that they've ever had in their work experience. And we thought, man, this is something great. And I went into his office a few days later, and he said, can we do it again next weekend? And I said, no, there's no possible way we're going to pull this off again. But he said, we've got to figure out how to turn this moment into a movement, because this can't be just a program that we tack onto the side of our business, or this volunteer experience that we tack onto the side of our work. How do we take our everyday work and create a movement around it? And we took a 3-tiered approach that every organization that we work with now takes. And that's an individual approach, a team approach, and an organizational approach. It happens on a quarterly basis where organizations are going together collectively, where everybody goes into the world and does good collectively together in a big good opportunity. It might be backpacks, or it could be going into schools for teachers. Whatever that big good is, it's done on an organizational level. And then we drive that into a team level where the team has the autonomy to say, how are we going to go into the world as a team, collectively, the 8 or 12 of us or 4 of us, and go into the world and make the world a better place. And we're going to do that on a quarterly basis. And then individually, what am I most passionate about? How can I take my passion? But the organization has to support all of that. And when it does, we're starting to see culture being built, because culture is what most people are doing most of the time. And rather it being a CSR program, once we build the culture through doing good, we're seeing significant results in the business. And that's what Scott saw. Scott saw his employee turnover drop by over 20%. It saved him $5.8 million a year. That's significant if you're the owner of the company. The CFO no longer thought he was crazy for hiring me. Initially, he said, Scott, what's wrong with you? You're going to hire this pastor to come into our business and give all of our money away. And then when it made $5.8 million a year, he was asking me over for drinks. It was amazing. It was like awesome. And we saw significant business results. And this is what I didn't understand initially, because Scott wanted to hire me. He thought he was going to get free advice. But I thought if I could scale my good that I was collectively doing with just 100 people, 200 people, to over 3,000 people, what kind of good could I do in the world? So I thought, let's embark on this. Let's figure out how to build this. And it continued to build and build and build. And we saw business coming into the door. It was authentically done for the right reasons, but then as business was growing, Scott had to make a commitment a promise from leadership that as the culture and the good would drive the business, that the business would continue to do greater good in the world. So year over year, the big good that was happening organizationally and on a team level, an individual level, the promise was we're going to keep doing more and more good year over year. And I'm happy to tell you that in just 5 years, we were able to give over 700,000 backpacks with school supplies to kids all across the country. Isn't that an awesome thing? It's amazing stuff. It's amazing, amazing good has happened. But employees were starting to say some significant things that we weren't expecting either. I talked to one employee, and she said, you know, when I first got hired into work for this company, I looked at it as if it was just a job. You know what jobs are, right? Jobs are for survival. We need a shelter, we need food, we get a job, we get out of the parents' house, they're no longer telling us how to live. Jobs are great, right? And then eventually we start to get a little older and we're thinking about career. And she said, you know what, I thought my job is turning into a career. This is significant now. I have more significance. That's why we turn jobs into careers. I have more stability. Then she said, Ryan, something transitioned in me when I got involved in doing good through my work, and I aligned my why with my what. She said, I no longer look at this as a job or a career. I have found my calling in this company. Now, when you talk to police officers or firemen or EMTs, and you ask them, why do you do what you do every day? They'll tell you, I feel called to it. I have a sense of calling to be an EMT, or I have a sense of calling to be a police officer. But many times when you talk to just an employee that works within a business, if it's warehouse or even in communications or marketing, you say, why do you do what you do? Many times it's, I love what I do. I love communicating. I love telling stories. But rarely will I ever hear the word calling come up. And calling has a significant lean toward it. When you think about, do you feel called to do what you do every single day? And can your job be more than a career? Can you really walk into the day knowing that you feel called to do what you do? I would ask this to a room of communicators. I would not just simply say, have you over the last 4 days figured out how to communicate better? But I would ask, have you figured out why you're communicating in the first place? Do you know your why? So we brought this idea into the business, and it had such a significant business result that we built a whole system around it. Over chips and salsa, it didn't look like this. We had a napkin, and we drew a circle, and we called it the virtuous circle of success. But over the last 6 years, we've worked on building an emotional operating system where we align a cause with the strategic business intent, where we bring that and align that to employees' passions and customers' passions, where we teach 5 promises that I'm going to bring to you today that the company makes collectively, that employees make individually, and teams make together. And those 5 promises we've learned over the last 6 years were the very foundational promises that made the culture of good grow the culture within Scott's business and now grow the culture in multiple other companies as well. It aligned employees, customers with a cause that aligned with the business. The first of those promises, sorry, I'm going backwards here. The first of those promises is we're going to care. These are promises that I want you to make with me today as you walk out that door today. That you're going to lean your life in a way that says with your work, I care. I care about my customers. I care about my peers. Dare I say it, I care about my boss. I care about my industry. And I care about the world. But organizations that only care about profit will be left with employees that only care about paychecks. That's what Scott was scared of. Scott was scared that he was going to wake up in the morning and his employees were going to come into work and they were only going to be concerned about their paycheck. And that was going to lead toward disengagement. And more disengagement would impact his business. And eventually, companies that don't care about culture will fade into the distance and into the background. Culture has got to be an important part of what you care about as a leader. If culture doesn't matter to you as a leader, it's not going to matter to those that work with you and for you. But how are we caring with our work? How are we leaning our lives and our work into the world in such a way that says we really do care? These are in big ways. These can be in small ways. How are you caring for your employees? How are you caring for your coworkers? How are you caring for the world? The second of the promises was really significant. It's driving the business. This is the part I didn't get when I first started the culture of good. This is the part where employees know how their work is impacting the business success. It's actually a two-part promise. Drive the business to greater success so that we can do more good. We're still motivated by the good that we do in the world. And the promise is every single day I'm going to do my best. I'm going to bring my excellence into my work, my development. As you came to IABC, you're going to take everything that you've received over the last few days. You're going to take it back to your business, back to your work, and you're going to drive the business success with that. Why? Because you know, ultimately, driving the business, if we can make this promise together, if we drive the business to greater success, we can do greater good in the world. It's all motivated by the good we can do for others. We don't have to choose between being profitable and being purposeful. We can wake up every single day and say that culture matters. Driving the business matters. Caring for the world matters. Thirdly, connecting. Ultimately, as a communicator, that's what we're doing, right? We're connecting. We're connecting with others. We're taking time to not only be the communicators that leave this place and leave this conference this week and say, how can we say things better? But I'm going to challenge you as communicators today to not just ask, how can I communicate what I need to say better? But I'm going to challenge you, how can I listen better? My wife reminds me all the time, Ryan, communication isn't just talking. It's listening. I hear her in my head right now. Ryan, listen to me. Listen to me, Ryan. And I'm telling you, the world is saying to you as communicators, listen. The millennial generation is saying, listen to us. Listen. Don't just take Simon Sinek's word for what millennials are. Listen to them. Listen, sit down, have conversations, connect, be a part of the conversation. Say the things that matter because you know they matter to those that you're saying them to. Don't just go out of this place and say, I know how to say what I want to say in a better way or more creative way or more progressive way, or I need to add this tool into our business because we learned about it, and now we can add this tool and we can say things in a more dynamic way because we live in a world where it's easier to say things, so it's harder to be heard. So let's say it louder, more dynamic. Let's create buzz. No, I want to challenge you before you get into saying something. Make a commitment with me to promise. The first thing that you're going to do as you walk out that door is make a commitment that you're going to connect with those you're talking to. That you're going to be a listener. Leaders, listen. We find our calling in life when our greatest passion collides with our greatest contribution to make the world better. But we really don't know how we can contribute to the world, what we're really passionate about, until we know what the world needs. I had a mentor when I was 16 years old that looked at me and he said, Ryan, He said so many people want to go into the world and discover their purpose and know their calling, and he said it this way, and he had a real raspy voice. So I'll try to sound like him. He said, Ryan. That's how he sounded when he talked. You listened to him. He said, Ryan, the need is the call. The need is the call. But how do we know what people need until we're there, until we're present, until we listen to them, until we feel what they feel, until we have empathy, until we're vulnerable, until we look at the world and say, what are the needs around me that I'm most passionate about, and how can I contribute, not outside of my work, but with my work? I'm not challenging you today to go out of here and quit your job and go work for a charitable organization. I'm challenging you to do what you do every single day and find what you're most passionate about and job craft what you do in your work with the passion that you have for making the world a better place. I'm talking about being able to meet the needs in this world that are so necessary to be met. How are we connecting? Just because you're saying something and someone hears you doesn't mean you're connecting. Connection is relational, not transactional. Connection is about stopping, listening, and saying, how can I contribute through my greatest contribution, my greatest passion to make the world a better place? That's where I find my calling. So it's about caring. It's about driving the business to greater success so we can do more good. It's about connecting. Fourthly, it's really about inspiring. How are you sharing the good that you do? Once you start doing good in the world, once you're impacting the world, once you're volunteering and giving of your time and contributing in significant ways in the world that aligns with your everyday work, how are you going to share that? Some people say, well, I don't want to share the good that I'm doing. And I'm not talking about bragging. I'm talking about inspiring. How are you able to inspire others with the good that you're doing? Your coworkers, do they know what you're passionate about? Owners, leaders, managers, listen to me. Do you know what your employees are passionate about? Do they know what you're passionate about? How are we inspiring others? We should never do good to be seen, but we should always be seen doing good. Every single one of us in our lives will have opportunities to live our lives in significant ways. They're all around us. They're in our neighborhoods. They're in our cities, in our towns. They're in the boardroom. They're in the workplace. The things that you're passionate about and you're moved by. I'm challenging you to lean your life into those things and align that with your work. My daughter, every time one of the commercials comes on where there's animals in small cages and it looks like the dog's crying and Sarah McLachlan comes on the TV and she's singing, "In the eyes of the angels." My daughter's just over there crying profusely, and I'm just kind of like sitting there, and it's not that I don't love animals, it's that she loves animals. Your passion's going to be different than the person sitting next to you. But how you share your passion with others can inspire them to do good themselves. I like to say it this way. If you're infected with passion, you should sneeze on everybody around you. Don't do it right now. Wait till after the conference is over. We don't want to be liable for anything, I promise. But sneeze on everybody. When you want to get that contagious inspiration, using your work, using your voice, using your craft, your skill to inspire the world to do greater things. So caring is important. Driving the business is significant to greater success so we can do more good. Connecting, listening is really important. Inspiring others is so valuable. Lastly, please, 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 please be authentic. Be genuine. Do the right thing for the right reasons. Make sure that your words align with what you do. This goes for those in leadership positions all the way through to frontline employees. Because the life that we lead is the legacy we leave. What we do every single day has the opportunity to have a significant impact on the people around us. But if we go into this type of work of doing good and aligning it with our business and aligning it with our work, but we're doing it for the wrong reasons, simply to be more profitable, and we see that all the time. And we can see right through the PR efforts and the marketing efforts of companies that treat their employees like dirt and then go tell their employees to go plant trees in the dirt. And then take pictures of their employees planting trees in the dirt that they've become in order to push out PR to the world and say, look how good of a company we are. Employees can see right through that, and it builds a culture of distrust. It builds a culture of skepticism. We know why companies do what they do, don't we? We see it all the time. But when you see a company that authentically cares, authentically wants to drive the business to greater success so they can do more good, authentically wants to connect to customers and employees and connect with the world, authentically wants to inspire, the challenge is to be authentic. It's the same challenge that I gave to Scott over chips and salsa that I give to you. In all of your success, in all of your striving to do what you do in terms of accomplishment, in all of your building of your life, don't forget that there's other little Ryans out there. There's other broken families. There's other needs in your community. There's other significant opportunities that are all around us every single day that we have an opportunity to build our legacy around. I challenge you to live a life of legacy. Don't just say things. Know why you say them. Don't just try to connect to get your message out, but to connect because you want to get to know people. Don't just communicate from you to them, but communicate as a listener first. Take time to care about the stuff that you should be caring about in a whirlwind of a world that says we should care about other stuff. Some would say that this world is many times a dark place. But I would say that darkness seems to always be there until light shows up. And as communicators, we have an opportunity to be a light. We have an opportunity to connect with others, to inspire them, to shine as bright as we can with our words and our actions, to inspire others, our team, our coworkers, our employees, to inspire our manager and our boss. When I came in to work for Scott, there wasn't a job created for me. I just stepped into the position that wasn't even there. And I forced my way into a company of over over 3,000 employees in 42 states. And I said, I'm going to make something of this. Don't make excuses. Don't allow those thoughts of fear that says, well, I'm going to go back and I'm going to try this, but my boss doesn't care about anything. Or my manager, they're not into this kind of fluffy stuff. This isn't fluff. $5.8 million isn't fluffy stuff. This is real. This drives business, but it also drives good in the world. And be authentic. Do things for the right reasons. all the tools and ideas and creativity and products and all the stuff that you're gathering and all the connections that you've made and everything that you're getting out of this conference, IABC 2018, and you walk out that door, all that stands in front of you is opportunity. Imagine what could happen if 1,300 of us, 1,300 of us scattered all across the globe, go back into our community and take our greatest passion, collide it with our greatest contribution to make the world a better place. The life we lead is a legacy we leave. When I was 6 years old and I lost my mom, and my dad was on heroin, I had a teacher named Mrs. Overly. 6 years ago, Mrs. Overly reintroduced herself in my life. She came up to me, she's about this tall, and I looked down, and I didn't know who she was. She looked up at me and she said, you don't remember who I am, but are you Ryan? And I said, yeah, I'm Ryan. She said, are you Ryan McCarty? I said, yeah. And she started crying. Tears are just coming down her face. And I never have that impact on people. When I first meet them, I'm just like, this is different, but I'll go with it. And she said, you don't remember who I am, but I was your teacher when your mom committed suicide. She said, they didn't know what to do with you at the funeral because you were just running around. You didn't know what was going on. She said, they called me on the phone. Your dad was a heroin addict. They called me as your teacher to come to the funeral home and take care of you. And she said 3 words to me when I met her again 6 years ago. She said 3 words, and I'm going to leave you with these words. She said, Ryan, I just want you to know when your mom committed suicide and your dad was on heroin and you were in that funeral home, she said, I was there. She said, when class would start, I'd put a towel over my shoulder because I knew I'd look in the back of the class, and at some point during class when I was teaching first grade and teaching math and arithmetic, and she said, I knew at some point in class I'd look over and you'd be crying. She said, I have that towel on my shoulder before the class started because I'd come over and I'd pick you up, and teachers can't do that anymore. But she said, I just want you to know that I would hold you the rest of the class. She said, I want you to know that I was there. I was there. She went back to her husband when I was going through all of that, and she said, there's this little kid in my class who just lost his mom to suicide, and his dad's on heroin. I want to adopt him. And her husband said, would you stay out of people's business? Why did she do that? Not all teachers do that. Her position, her title was teacher. She became more than that to a 6-year-old little kid. She leaned her life into the painful parts of this world. She became a light in darkness. She discovered calling in the midst of career. She aligned her passion for her students with a contribution that made my world a better place. I'm just asking you to do the same thing when you leave this conference. Last year I went on a 3-month bus tour with a book that I had authored called Build a Culture of Good, and I went through the town that she's in again, and she got on the bus, and this is a picture of Mrs. Overly. Be her. Live your life with a sense of legacy, with a sense of purpose. I'm going to ask you to use your imagination just for a moment because I've got just a few more minutes with you. And usually I ask an audience to go out from this place and spend some time thinking about their legacy and thinking about their purpose and what they're passionate about. We're just going to take a couple minutes in this room right now to do this before we leave this conference. Please, nobody move. Just give me 2 more. How many can give me 2 more minutes? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. No, I'm just kidding. It's an old pastor joke. Sorry about that. Everybody just close your eyes if you would. We're just going to use our imagination. I just want you to think right where you're at. You can go ahead and start the music if you like. Just right where you're at. Just imagine. Imagine 1,300 of us going out from this conference with this idea that we can make the world a better place. We've talked enough about all the negative stuff going on. It's time to do something about it. It's time to say something about it. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about discrimination? What are you going to do about bigotry? What are you going to do about hate? What are you going to do about the hurt in that family? What are you going to do about that coworker that's walking through a tragedy of their own? How are you going to say with your life, looking back, just imagine yourself 20, 30 years from now, looking back over your life and being able to say to just one person, just another little 6-year-old little Ryan, I was there. I was there. Because that's legacy. Legacy isn't how big of a house you're going to be able to build or what kind of car you drive or what watch is on your wrist or how many shoes you own. Legacy is about caring for others. Legacy is about doing what you do in business because you know you can do greater good in the world. Legacy is about connecting with people on an emotional, empathetic level where you care. Legacy is about inspiring the world to do the same. Inspiring your kids, your spouse, your partner. Inspiring your team at work, inspiring your organization. Legacy is about being authentic, being more than your position and more than your title. Legacy is about saying with your life, just like Mrs. Overly said to me, I was there. I was there. Let's go ahead and open up your eyes. So that's my challenge. You can keep the music going. It's my challenge. Go out from this place. Come back next year, 2019, to the conference. But in between this year's conference and next year's conference, let's rock the hell out of this world. Let's do some amazing good. Let's say with our lives, we've done something significant and meaningful, not outside of our work, but with our work. Let's say with our lives to another 6-year-old little kid who needs us in the world, I was there. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Brad. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ryan. What a powerful, thoughtful, inspiring message to bring our conference to a close. I know I'm going to go home knowing how a for-profit company can operate a business with the soul of a nonprofit. Now, before you head for the door, as Ryan instructed you to do, hang on for a couple of minutes because we have a special announcement coming your way. At this time, right now, mesdames et messieurs, je vous présente Sharon Hunter, IABC Chair.
Wow, I need a minute there. Well, we've come to the point where we need to say thank you, and with gratitude to all the people that made this conference what it is this week. First of all, thank you, Ryan. That was incredibly inspiring.